Hey, Granny Gear here for this old guy into bike. How would you like it if you never ever again had to degrease your chain or clean that part of your bike, all your drivetrain that gets so nasty? My gravel bike behind me here, I'm going to zoom in here. This cassette and this chain, see how shiny they are? I've never cleaned it, not one time in the last 2 years, and that chain is still not worn out. You want to know why? Stay tuned, because it turns out that wax, well, that's not just good for your legs, it's good for your chain too. Well, I'm sitting here trailside. I don't know if you can hear it. There's a little stream burbling along behind me. Wow, it's amazing what a whole bunch of rain can do. So I think it was 2019 Sea Otter. And it was the last day of the show. My feet were tired. I've been working the show all day doing the media stuff. And a guy in a booth caught my eye. A guy with long hair, looked like some old rocker or something. But he had some chain lube on display. He was persuading. He definitely caught my attention. And it was good timing too, because I had been looking for a good chain lube. I was completely dissatisfied with every chain lube I've ever used. You know, some would last a long time, but they were just so messy. I got so tired of getting jerseys stained when really, leaning over your bike. Oh my gosh. I was looking for something better. And he turned me on to this Smoothe Lube. Now, this happens to be the 5311 formula. He kind of designed this for road bikes. He has about, I don't know, at least 4 or 5, 6 formulas, depending on what you want to do with it. But as I got talking, the guy, his name was John, and his business is aMTBer products. Yeah, it's not easy to say. I got to talking to him, and I thought, this is a pretty smart fellow. He's a good salesman too. So I went away with a couple samples, and of course, like any good journalist, I put them in the drawer and I pretty much forgot about them. So I don't know, it was probably sometime in the summer. And I once again became disgusted with my chain lube, and I said, you know what? I think I need to, what did I do with those samples? And I tried them. Before I did though, I spent a little time on the phone with John. I'm like, how do you do this? Because I had a feeling that wax chains, that's something a little bit different. Not something I'd ever done before. Now, I knew there was things like, crock pot, where you want to take your chain off, you melt some wax, and you put it in a crock pot, put it back on. I was not about to do that. I don't care how good it is. But interestingly enough, a wax chain has been shown in laboratory testing to be the fastest, most efficient way of, having a chain. It saves you the most watts, right? And I'm all about watts. Now, I've been using this now ever since then. That's got to be getting close to 3 years. I use it on all my bikes, all my wife's bikes, road, mountain, gravel bikes. I have been nothing but pleased. I'm not going back to those greasy, grimy chain lubes ever again. Why has it been so good? Well, it's been a couple of things. First of all, like I said, it's very clean. Now watch, this chain, I haven't cleaned it, like I said, in ages. If I rub my fingers on it, there's almost nothing there except the lightest little bit of darkness on my finger, and that rubs right off. Probably the next thing I would say that is really, really great about using Smoothe Lube formulas, in this case I've been using 5311, which is one of the newer formulas, but not the newest, and I'll get to that later, is how long things last. Now this chain that's on here, it's well into its 2nd year of use. And I ride this bike 90% of the time over all my other bikes, right? Do a lot of climbing too, and I'm a big guy. I'm 175, 180 pounds, with gear and whatnot on. Did my little Pedro's chain checker the other day just to see, well, maybe it's time for a new chain. It's got 3 notches on it, right? 1 is you're good to go. 2 is, you might start thinking about replacing it. 3 is it's done. It's still on notch number 1. That's a 2-year-old chain. I don't keep track of miles, but wow, that's impressive. And I think the third thing, if I'm going to number them all, was the way that it doesn't pick up grit and grime. Like you're on a normally lube chain, whatever, it's an oil-based chain or something like that, and you go through a maybe a puddle or through a lot of sand, or you got it muddy at one point, and you get that, you know, sound as you pedal. And that usually doesn't go away until you like take your chain off and really clean it. This just doesn't do that. Over time, what I think happens is the wax builds up a bit of a layer in there, and it just keeps stuff from getting in between the rollers, is what I think happens, because I've had my bike covered with grit and grime from wet days, and by the time I get home, even before I get home, it's just not making that kind of awful noise, which is, you know, that's really nice, because who wants mice in your chain, right? And I think that's probably one of the reasons why your drivetrains, or at least my drivetrain, seems to last a really long time using Smoothe Lube formulas. So what I gained in the last 3 years of using Smoothe Lube, that wax-based lube, is a clean running chain, a long-lasting chain. And if chain's lasting long, you know what usually wears out your cassettes and your chain rings is because your chain wears and stretches, so to speak, over time as the metal pieces wear in and elongate. That is what really contributes to the tooth wear on things, that and, you know, grit and grime. But since I'm not picking up grit and grime, and it seems like the metal is just, you know, impervious, and it isn't, but man, wow, it lasts a long time. I mean, what's not to like? Well, there might be a couple of things, honestly. I've never tried this where it's really wet, like really wet conditions, because, hey, Southern California, I mean, this has been a wet year, so. But most of the time, I'm not. But dusty and sandy, that I do. What else might not be great? Well, it's not the cheapest stuff, I'll say that. I'm sure if you're budget shopping for chain lube, I don't know, is anything inexpensive these days? It probably isn't. But yeah, it's somewhat costly. But I mean, what does a chain cost now? $50, $100? What does a chain ring cost, or a cassette? I mean, some of these cassettes are $250, $300, $400, right? Well, if you can go longer for your chain not wearing out, and if your chain lube costs $3 more a bottle or $5 more a bottle, you know, that adds up really fast when the cost of chains and whatnot are what they are. So is there one other thing I can think of? Oh, well, you know what? It's not the longest lasting lube you've ever used, possibly. And that, I mean, if you want to put it on and not re-lube your chain for 500 miles, this isn't that. I don't know if any wax-based lubes are. They tend to be a little bit light. However, the way that this works over time, it gets better and better. I think you break your chain in, you break your chain into the lube breaks the chain in. I don't really know how that works. It's a mystery to me, but it gets better over time. And so what I found is when I first started applying it, and you want to do this to a clean chain. If you can clean your chain safely, strip the old lube or the old packing grease off, that's nice. If not, you can just start applying Smoothe Lube, and eventually it will work all that packing grease or whatever lube you had on there. You know, you might want to pre-clean your chain at least a little bit, knock the big chunks off, but eventually it'll work all that out and it'll work itself in. So the way that I generally apply this is I'll get the bottle, I'll shake it really well, keep the cap on, right? Shake your booty, because there's a lot of solids in there. You want to make sure it's mixed up. Then get it upside down. Get your bike where you can turn the cranks over backwards, and I'll turn the cranks backwards fairly slowly, keeping the nipple of the bottle centered in the chain, just making sure I'm getting a good squoze of stuff in the middle of the chain. I'll go around a couple times, maybe, depending upon how much I think my chain needs in the moment. And then I'll take the little brush that comes with every bottle, like a little tiny paintbrush, and I'll hold that on the chain. I'm working that into the rollers as I'm pedaling backwards. I'll do it with the top of the chain. Sometimes I'll do it with the bottom of the chain as it's going past me that way. And that's pretty much it. I like to let it dry. Ideally, I like to let it dry overnight. It doesn't really need that. You could probably let it dry for 15 or 20 minutes if that's all you've got. I think an hour or so would be, you know, probably a little bit better. At first, you want to use it somewhat, probably every ride, right? After every ride, you want to run it on, because you're doing a couple things with it from my experience. If you have old lube in there, this is the Smoothe Lube product will eventually work all that out of there and replace it. So that's a process. Also, even if you're starting with a stripped clean chain It takes a little while for all of this to bond with the chain, so to speak. It fills in the gaps, it works into the chain. There's some, like I said, super secret stuff in there that actually is doing things that it's not, I don't even want to try and explain it. It's magical. So now that this chain is, you know, it's seasoned, if you will, like a good cast iron pan or something, I am lubing it probably every third ride, maybe. And if they're short rides, I won't even do it that much. But if I was out for, say, 50 miles or so, I'll probably do it at least every other ride with that kind of mileage. If I'm just running around doing quick stuff, when I think it needs it. And the way I usually check is I'll take the chain and I'll squeak it sideways, and if it feels kind of dry and rattly, then maybe it's time to lube it up. I don't know if I'm really losing any efficiency at that point, but it does start to get maybe slightly noisy. I don't really like that. So that's about it for now. It's a complete success story for me. Smoothe Lube has really changed the way that I maintain my bikes. It's certainly given me, well, saved me money over time, that's for sure. The cost of chains and things and all that now, I love that. Meanwhile, it's stopped raining. I think I'm gonna go out and see if I can finish a ride, if I can find a dry spot. Luckily this area is, you can see it, pretty sandy and rocky, so even after rain it's pretty good. Anyway, granny gear out for this old guy and the bike. Check out Smoothe Lube, and I would be very surprised if you're not just as impressed as I was. You guys take care.